So in 2014, I started a little group at my school, Michigan State University, called the Pub Club. This is our little logo here. And the reason I did that is because I had gone to a series of conferences. So you go to a conference like this, you talk to people, you get all excited about your science, and then you come home, and then you get back into your depression, and you're like, what am I doing here? And nothing works, and what am I going to do with my life? And I realized after several of these experiences that this was really dumb. Why couldn't I have the conference experience every week throughout the year? Because I was surrounded by all these famous, I'm at Michigan State University, I'm surrounded by famous people. I have all of these peers that are doing the same stuff as me. Why am I not tapping into that resource? So that is kind of what I think of as the community of minds. So there's multiple layers of the community of minds. You have that local level, the people who work at the bench next to you, the people who work down the hall, the people who work in the building next door, and maybe your regional level where you have the school next to you, even if you hate them because they're your fierce rival. We get past that. And then you still can go to those meetings once a year, but by then you're a lot more confident. You're comfortable with communicating, you're comfortable with interacting. But throughout that year, rather than working through frustration and all these extra hours doing the same thing over and over again, you can actually ask the people around you, and maybe they know a better method. Maybe they've actually troubleshooted something that you're working with, and they're an expert, and you never knew because you never bothered to meet them. And so we started meeting every Friday at 4. We have snacks. We have 3 PIs because there's 3 labs on our floor. We all meet together, and we just talk about science. So we help each other stay up to date on what's new in science. We talk about what new methods are out there. We do RCR discussions. So we talk about, what's the problems with genome editing? What do we think about that? What do we think about open access stuff? So what's bioarchive, and do we think that's a good thing or a bad thing? And you guys can pull up chairs if you want. Drag them around.
Oh, I'm fine, thanks.
I'm good. So I'm Bethany, by the way. Hi, nice to meet you. And so these are just some pictures showing some of the activities that we've done. We have a guest speaker every month. So some of the guest speakers we've had, Robert Newell, this guy JP, he actually was a former postdoc in one of our labs, and now he works in industry. So we asked him to come back and talk to us, like, what's that like? How does it work? Dan Jones, he runs the mass spec facility at MSU, and he's really awesome. Rick Campa, he is the associate dean for the graduate school, but he also runs this really cool teaching fellowship program. So he came and talked to us about how do you actually become competitive for a job beyond the bench? What are those other skills that you need, and how do you acquire them? And so this really got us talking and thinking about how do we become these well-rounded scientists? How do we actually get those skills that everyone says we need, but we're all too afraid to think of whether we can actually do that or not. And so within 2 years, we've all been able to do this networking. We've met all these PIs. We've got to hear kind of their backstories. And because we were kind of having all these resources, I put a website together. Right now, it's the Pub Club Hub. And I actually have some business cards I'll hand you guys out. I'm going to be transitioning it more into the comm mentality. So it's basically to try to help you guys to connect with resources that you might need to help you identify what is your passion area. What career do you want? Because I think it's kind of silly for us to go through this painful process of getting a PhD if we don't know what we want to use it for. And if you don't know what you want to use it for, how do you know that you're actually gaining the skills that you need and tailoring that training program to what will most benefit you for what your future career goals are? So I just want to challenge you to look at your PhD or whatever level you're at as part of your career, not just a step towards your career, and start actively managing that career. So you're all in research. Research your career, research your life, and look for those tools. Look for the people that can be resources to you. Because people are a huge resource. I've met so many people at conferences that I've kept in contact with. So one of those turned into this Skype mini conference with Detlef Weigel's lab. Have you guys heard of Detlef Weigel? So he has a pretty large, he runs one of the Max Planck Institutes in Tübingen, Germany. And I actually met him at a very small Keystone conference. He was the coolest person there because I was nobody, and I harassed him, and I didn't even know who he was, and he took it so well, and he gave it right back. And that has stuck with me since then. So I actually introduced him to a guy that's now a postdoc in his lab. So I visited there, they visited here, and we ended up having this Skype mini conference where basically all the Pub Club labs got together and got to Skype with his lab in Germany. So you can have a conference, it didn't cost us anything. We got snacks on each side, and we got to talk about our science. that was really fun. So there are so many ways that you can actually interact at multiple levels across the scientific community. And think of ways that you can contribute, and in contributing you actually get a lot back. So any questions? Because I could probably keep talking about this for hours. So I'd rather ask you guys, like, what questions do you have?
This is very MSU. What if we're not at MSU?
So that's a really good question. So you can actually create your own, I mean, it doesn't have to look exactly like the pub club, but I would say that there are some very key ingredients to starting a local community of minds. So there has to be good food to get people to come.
True story. True story.
So don't buy stale Meyer cookies, so you probably don't all have Meyers. That's something in Michigan.
In Indiana.
Okay. But don't just get crappy cookies, get some good food, and people, especially if it smells good, they will really come.
So a fan in the door,
there you go.
Just like
Waft
blow it through the department.
Yes, yes. And another really important thing is it has to be student driven, but it also has to be PI supported. So when the PIs come, the students and postdocs come. If your PIs aren't actively supporting it, no one's going to come, because everyone's like, I have to be on my bench. I have to put my head down and act like the slave that I am, and I can't do this. And it's just, there's so much more, you will be so much more productive if you start talking to people, start thinking about your science in a more interactive and more engaging way. Have them challenge what you're doing. If you have a paper that's ready, send it out to your floor or your lab or your group and say, hey, can you guys peer review this for me? You're giving them the opportunity to practice that skill, and you're also getting their feedback before you have to send it, right? So student-driven, PI-supported, it's really important to have a consistent time. So bi-weekly meetings are crap. What we do is it's flexible. If you can't come that week, who cares? You don't make it that week. But the pub club is there for you whenever you need the pub club. So if it's a weekly event, people can count on every Friday at 4, that's when it is. Now maybe in your group it won't be Friday at 4, maybe that time would suck. But any time that you set, same time, same place, every week, people come when they can. And I'm pretty sure there was one last thing that I'm not going to remember, because there's always one thing you don't remember. But I have, as I say, if you go on the Pub Club website, and I'll hand out my card, you can go online and find it. Tons of resources there, and there's a mission page, so it kind of explains. And I think the most key thing is you need to know why you're doing it. It's not just about getting together. It's sure you want to get to know each other, but for me, the real purpose is in engaging in the science and getting to know people. So you want it to be informal, and you want to have it relaxed, and you want people just to feel free to talk to each other, ask stupid questions, practice your chalk talks, practice your elevator pitches, you know, talk about writing, talk about all the things, make a list of the things that you don't know how to do the most. These are the things I suck at the most, and then help each other with that. You know, let's do our LinkedIn pages together. You know, let's learn what teaching resources are available at our school, and how do we actually tap into that. What are some outreach programs that we could do that our school is already doing, but we could become a part of that. So, I mean, yeah, the opportunities, what you could do are endless.
Students at our school have been doing what they call nerd night.
Yeah?
Where they're all supposed to get together at a local bar, usually, and have little competitions explaining different things. And whether it's their own research, or sometimes it's like, here's a topic, explain it in a certain amount of time, and then they rate each other.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
that kind of stuff. They do it over pizza here, basically.
Nice. That sounds perfect.
Florida, we do the Battle of the Brews, which is essentially a blind tasting of coffee. Coffee at the 3 p.m. hour seems to draw a lot of people in. I would totally agree with what you said. You know, if the PIs come, a lot of people come, and whenever we have very few PIs that come in, it's going to be a meeting of 3 or 4, which sort of brings my question in. How do you get the critical mass going?
I was actually shocked. Every week I was biting my nails that no one was going to come, especially the first few months. I was like, okay, I'm going to show up, I'm going to have all this food, and then no one's going to come. And I was shocked to find out that they did. And especially the more they kind of got used to it, they enjoyed it. So even though, you know, some weeks might be lower in attendance than others, they kind of got used to having that time to just kind of sit and relax and remember that they do enjoy science. And like I said, especially when the PIs are there, then people tend to come more. So obviously the PIs are busy. A lot of times they're out of town, especially mine, who's gone a lot of the time. So it's more of like speaking encouragingly to them, like, you know, it really means a lot to have you there, and we really value your support, and showing them the statistics on when you're gone, here are the percentage attendance from your lab. And they're like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I think It's hard to I think the biggest challenge I've faced is convincing people that this is something valuable for them. And if you can't get past their perspective that they're doing it as a favor to you, not as something that's meaningful for them personally, then you're going to have a hard time.
Are you articulated with any of the student clubs?
I haven't personally, no. So I actually tried first to get going with my program, and I tried another department, and it never really gained traction. So kind of going to that local, smaller level of labs that I was in direct contact with really helped. But I think probably every community that you're part of, you might have success in a different area or a different space, just depending on the interest level. So yeah, I would highly recommend not trying to do it alone. Probably try to find a couple other people that will be as committed to it as you are, so that you don't, if it's the week that your experiment ran long and you can't be there, that you know someone else is there to kind of make sure that things go. So.
I wonder if one of the ways to make sure that you get departmental and PI support is to emphasize the fact that you are helping graduate students and postdocs with these soft skills that everyone talks about, but often don't have a formal way of doing it. So if you can kind of connect directly, practicing presentations, working on LinkedIn pages, that these are really the kind of skills that students need to be formally learning, and you can you can interleave this with your social time as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I think if you wanted to write up a one-page thing of this is what we're doing, this is why, here are all the skills we're going to be developing, there's starting to be a little bit more pressure on PIs in the universities that you need to be incorporating this into your training, but a lot of them don't really know how. So if you actually do that thinking for them and say, okay, this is how you can do this for me, and we're going to kind of facilitate it, then you probably will get some support. But yeah, do a little investigating first. Maybe like draw something up and see, take it to them and say, I'd really like to do this, but I need some commitment for, that people will actually be there. And just try it. You don't know until you try, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
So is this open to undergraduates and graduates?
Yes, everyone, every level. Yeah, that's a key critical element. So part of really building that community of minds is that at every level there should be this kind of hierarchical training, but in a way that it doesn't feel like a hierarchy. So undergraduates are encouraged to come and they can sit down with the professors and they can hear their stories and they can learn just like everybody else. So yeah, that's really worked out. Although the undergraduates don't always, they're putting in their hours, so they don't always make it. But we've had several of them that have come more than once. So that's success. And then we also had some spin-off groups. So as a result of this, so Shin-Han Chu had come. He's one of the professors at MSU that does a lot of the computational stuff, and we had him come and talk to us. And we're like, look, none of us are going to be computational biologists, but what's the minimum that we need in order to be really proficient and understand what people are doing with our data? And so he kind of gave us some tips on that, and that resulted in a spin-off bioinformatics group that we call Python group. And actually the second year it was run by an undergraduate student. She completely took it over. She sent out the weekly reminders. She sent out weekly updates of this is what we did that week. And she put it on her CV, and she got asked about it when she was interviewing for grad school. That was the most frequent thing they would bring up is, well, so what about this Python coordinator thing? And she was so excited that she could actually tell them, yeah, I ran this group, and I actually know how to use R, and actually comfortable a little bit with Python because I did this. And she was, I think, pleasantly surprised that it made a real impact.
I realize you're talking about a very real-world event, but what springs to mind to me is the fact that you can do exactly the same thing long distance.
Yes.
So in Britain, there's a group called the Higher Education Bioscience Group, and every other Wednesday at 9 p.m. they meet on Twitter, and they use the hashtag #AGBioscience, and they share ideas, and there's always a topic and some questions, and there's people from all over joining in and sharing their ideas. And of course it can be out of the time zone, out of the country. We can obviously use resources on Planté as virtual journal clubs, skill building discussions, etc. So I think, yes, it's great to get together over pizza, but it's so easy to do this out with the limitations of a room.
Exactly, and that's kind of the concept behind this here on my shirt. So this Hub Club is just an example of part of your community of minds. It's your most local level, and on the back I kind of have a list of things that are in my community of minds. And you can see one of them is Coffee with Megan. So Megan's just a friend of mine that rotated to the lab, and now every week we do coffee together. So that's part of my community of mine. So it doesn't even have, say nobody at your school wants to do this kind of thing. That doesn't mean that you still can't establish and build your network. So you find a friend to do coffee with you. You engage in something like Mary said, so you can actually be reaching out internationally, and you can build all these different levels of that network without ever even leaving your home, because we do have the technology now to do that. So yeah, and we'll be working on kind of putting together some more resources for how you can engage in different ways at different levels, and putting that together. I'll have it on my website, and like I said, I'll give you the cards so you guys can find it easily. And I'm going to be working with Mary and Phil so we can actually put together some resources. So Phil's offered to help. He's got more the industry perspective. So if you're wanting to go into industry, how do you actually tailor your application materials for that? So he just, did you post that blog today about?
It'll post,
yeah. The CV versus resume, you know, what you actually submit. So the goal is, yeah, you should be responsible for your career, but as you can find people to help you so you're not just feeling completely overwhelmed. So my hope is to use my site to provide a gateway that's a little bit filtered so that you can say, okay, this is what I think I'm interested in, but where are some good resources, some quality resources that I can use to explore those options and explore those opportunities. And if you guys find things in your searches, I would love for you to let me know, send them to me, so that I can add those, because I can't find everything on my own. That's the whole point of having a network. So that would be great.